let's talk about something most of us have and honestly don't think about nearly enough, the 401k. It's supposed to be the bedrock of our retirement, right? The proof that you're doing all the right things for your future. But is that really the full picture?
So you're putting money away with every single paycheck. You're probably even getting that sweet company match. You've checked off the responsible adult box, but what if that warm, fuzzy feeling of security is kind of built on a shaky foundation? What if the smart thing isn't nearly as smart as we've all been told?
Okay, first, let's look at the promise of the 401k. For decades, this has been sold to us as the absolute cornerstone of retirement. You get a job, you sign up, and boom, your future is supposedly taken care of.
And you can see the appeal, can't you? It's easy. It's automatic. You set it and forget it, and just trust that the system's got your back. It's supposed to be this simple, trusted path to financial freedom. But the sources we're digging into today are basically screaming at us to take a much, much closer look.
So let's do that. Let's start uncovering some of these hidden flaws. This is where we start to question that conventional wisdom, because it turns out, just beneath that simple surface, there are some pretty big issues that can have a massive impact on your money.
So here's the disconnect. On the one hand, there's the belief, my 401k is a simple, safe place for my money to grow. But the reality? Well, according to our sources, that's a whole different story. We're talking about hidden fees and a real lack of oversight that can be secretly eating away at your hard-earned savings.
And it really boils down to two critical flaws that most people just never see. First, you've got these excessive service charges. We'll call them fees. And second, there's the lack of personal oversight that comes with that whole set it and forget it mindset.
And this statement from our source, man, it just puts it all in perspective. It's not saying 401ks are bad, not at all, but it's saying that relying exclusively on them is a strategic mistake. That's a huge warning sign, telling us not to put all our retirement eggs into one potentially leaky basket.
All right, so let's talk about the true cost of this over time. You know how compound interest is this magical force that builds wealth? Well, it also works wonders for fees, just in the wrong direction. This is exactly how a tiny little leak can eventually sink a giant ship. So let's ask the big question. How much damage can a small 1% fee really do? It sounds like nothing, right? 1%? You wouldn't even feel it. But in the investment world, a fee of 1% is actually considered pretty high. And over a 30 or 40-year career, that single percentage point, well, the final cost is kind of mind-blowing. Just take a look at the difference here. Over 30 years, that tiny 1% difference in fees creates this gigantic gap in how much money you end up with. It's not just a little bit of your balance, it's a huge chunk of your earnings. You know, the growth you were counting on, that just gets funneled away from you. And here's the knockout punch. 28%. That seemingly insignificant 1% fee could devour nearly a third of your potential retirement savings. Just let that sink in. Almost a third of your nest egg just gone. It just vanishes into the system without you ever even noticing.
Okay, so that's the problem. And yeah, it's a big one. But the point here isn't to just sound the alarm, it's to arm you with a better way. So let's look beyond just this one plan and talk about a diversified strategy that puts you back in the driver's seat.
The solution is what's called a diversified approach. And it's really just a fancy way of saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket. It's about spreading your investments and your risk across different tools, maybe things like IRAs or other accounts to build a much stronger financial foundation. So how do you make this strategic shift? Well, it's pretty straightforward. First, you just have to acknowledge the flaws we've been talking about. Then, you look beyond the 401k and realize it might not be enough all by itself. And finally, you start building a broader strategy, taking active control of your financial future.
Ultimately, this is all about rethinking what retirement planning is. It's about changing your identity, from being a passive saver who just lets the system do its thing to becoming an informed investor who actually understands the rules of the game and makes proactive choices.
And that right there is the key takeaway. That whole set it and forget it approach feels nice and easy, but your financial future is way too important to leave on autopilot. It deserves your attention and your strategy. So we'll leave you with this one last thing to think about. After all this, is your retirement plan really, truly designed to work for you? Or is it quietly working for somebody else? That's a question definitely worth asking. Thanks for tuning in to this explainer.